Welcome everyone to the show, Combustible Elements, real talk for real people. Here we try to put different ideas and perspectives together in a pot, heat it up, and get an explosion of knowledge and understanding. We understand that problems can only be fixed starting from the bottom to the top, building a great foundation for change and improvement. I'm Big Mel, and I'm joined by Ruben, aka the Monarch, and Aaron, the Hitman. Let's get started.
So, thank you once again for joining us for Combustible Elements. Guys, we're going to talk about a topic that a lot of people are not talking about. And it's a big topic, and it's been a big topic for probably the last 20, 30 years. We're going to talk about the young generation, and this society fell in the young generation. And when I say fell in the young generation, I'm not just talking about, are you a good parent to your child? I'm talking about, how can we make this generation grow? That should be our main goal as a society. Technically, I believe, or personally, I believe. So we're joined by somebody from that generation, because we're not. We're all old guys right now, or at least I'm an old guy. They're old, shaking his head. He's shaking his head. So introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bianca Ward. I'm 23, so I'm obviously part of the younger generation. And I'm just here to kind of give some feedback and some thoughts on this situation.
So my first question, and then I'm undecided who to start the question with. So let's start with Aaron. How do you feel about society and the young generation? Do you think that they're letting them down? Do you think they're doing everything that they can to help them grow and expand? What's your feelings on it?
Well, for me, it depends on what you are considering as society. Like, who do you want to be raising your children? Because raising your children starts at home. So the feeling to feel like that society is lacking and not raising your children the way that the younger generation, the way that they should be raised, it starts in the home. So I don't really hold any weight on society raising my children for me, or helping them succeed in the world today, because society is geared to help basically their own. Whoever is running society, whoever is holding the power, is making sure that they coming up and their family is staying in power or staying in the know. So it's really up to me and my circle of friends and family to, I guess, bring my children up in the way that I think they need to be brought up in society.
Okay, Ruben.
I don't know if I agree with what Aaron just said. When I think of society, I think as far as like, the village, because you always hear the term, it takes a village to raise a child. So when I'm thinking of society, it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, outside of people or the circle of people that you hang with. If it's just friends and family, that's your society. That's the people you spend the most of your time around. So like, if you have that village mentality as far as like you and your kids and things like that, that has a big influence on the outcome of their upbringing. So I think, if it's a matter of society, like for me, I know for me and my kids, like they're around their grandparents, and they're around, me, and they're around, people that I introduced them to, not so much so, random people or people that, especially now with COVID, they're not even in school physically, they're in school virtually. Their society revolves around whoever I let in my house, during these times, or even before COVID. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to rewind just a second, because I wanted to get in this. I was so excited having Bianca here and jump into the topic. I forgot to introduce everybody. Bianca introduced herself, obviously. That's Aaron the Hitman, Ruben the Monarch. I'm Big Mel. Sorry about that. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out our channel. Go from there. Back to the topic. Rewind. Bianca, do you feel like society is giving you all the tools that you need to grow, to achieve things?
No, And here's the reason why I think this. So I think with the exception of like where we are now, where how like COVID changed everything, where students are like at home and they're spending most of their time there, with the exception of that, in like normal society, students were spending most of their time with like their teachers throughout the day. So like you're really learning a lot from those people. You're learning a lot from your peers. You're learning a lot from those immediate people who are close to you, who are outside of your home. So if you're spending most of your time in school and schools aren't focused on teaching you what you need to know to like grow in your life, then you have to focus on what's going on inside of your home. And the people who are going to be inside of your home, chances are they're going to share like some of the same opinions. So you're only getting the same perspectives like repeated over and over again. So it's kind of like, it kind of like makes you have to depend on what's going on outside of your home.
Okay, that's a different perspective. You would be more in tune with what's going on as far as school education goes, especially when we talk about college and universities, and we will talk about them because they are part of this problem. Okay, I like to hit you guys with a fact. I usually like to start off with a fact, but I'm gonna hit you with a fact anyway. Everybody knows when the Great Recession was. That was like the end of the Bush years, going into the beginning of the Obama years. And we are just now, before COVID hit, just recovering the jobs that we lost during that recession. But we didn't gain any earnings. So meaning when that recession started in 2007, and we're in what, 2021, the people that recovered jobs, generally the millennials, we'll get into like the descriptions of the groups, they are still making the same, which is why this minimum wage thing was so big, because we're losing jobs when these things happen. And then these jobs, when they finally come to the younger generation, there's no inflation for the job, meaning like they're not making more as opposed to the time and what's going on in the world and prices. So they're in a situation where they can't really grow. Do you think that it's fair for them to be like lower paid service, you know, as they start out with all the things that they have to have? Like when I was 18, I went and got an apartment. Well, actually I had a house and then I had an apartment. But you can't do that at 18 now. You know, at 18, it's going to take them longer to be able to save money to get a house because the wages are lower. And if they go to school, it's going to take them longer to pay off that student debt. And sometimes that debt is their house, depending on what college or university they went to. Education since 1980 has been growing a steady 7% each decade. And in some decades, even more than 7% each year. So do you think, and this goes back to what we were talking about before, about is society giving people the necessary tools that they need? Do you think it's fair that education is so high for these kids to improve themselves and that the cost of living is not calculated for them to start? Who do we go to? We started Aaron, Ruben.
So one thing people got to realize is when it comes to education, it was always meant as a class type of thing. Like the fact that we have access to free education in the United States, it's not a common thing all around the world. You know, like I come from Haiti where like if you wanted to be educated, you had to pay to go to school. If you don't have the money to pay to go to school, then you can't go to school. And this we're not talking about, you know, universities. We're talking about from grade school all the way up to universities, you got to pay. So the fact that here, you know, we have, though it may not be the best, it's still free. You know, most people don't take full advantage and full access to it. So now we fall in a situation where like, okay, you got to go to college, and when you're done college, you're not making, you know, do as far as based on everything that you learn and all the money that you spent, you're not gonna get a full return on your investment because you're in so much debt. Yes, people that go to college should be paid a better wage, but at the same time, like what are you really going to college for? Like, what degree are you learning? Okay, you went to college and you got yourself a political science degree. That doesn't mean you should be coming out making top dollars now with this political science degree. Like, what does that even really mean? You know, like, it was a time where most people that were going to college, it was like you're either a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, you know, core degrees that required actually thinking and actually real studying. Over time, you know, somewhere on the line, all these other degrees started popping up. Liberal arts. This isn't me, you know, attacking, you know, somebody with a liberal arts degree or political science degree, but it's almost like it's a degree, it's college. Yes, you went and you graduated, you finished, but like, what are the tangible of that degree? What are we gonna do with it? Like that's not sufficient enough. Nor does it warrant you now just because you have a degree to get paid, let's say 50, 60,000, because what's your value at that point, even with that degree?
Okay, so Ruben, that's a great answer. There are some places that pay for your education. Most of them are communist nations, like say Cuba. You have so many people walking in Cuba with doctorates. It's ridiculous with degrees. And it was always rumored that that's one of the reasons the U.S. didn't want to open its borders with Cuba, because you had so many people overqualified for jobs here. But I want Bianca to answer your answer to the question, because I'm curious to see what she says.
All right, so a couple things are coming up for me just like listening to you. So here's the whole thing about like universities nowadays. So like, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like in the past, it has been like either you're a doctor or a lawyer. We know that. But like nowadays, there are so many different options for you. And I think more people nowadays are kind of more focused on like the business side. There are more people who are going into like building businesses. So I think kind of having more majors that are like tailored in the liberal arts gives you kind of more of those communication skills that you need, and more of those kind of like people skills to be able to build those businesses, because that goes more with what's showing up in society. So I think that that's really helpful. But also too, I want to mention like not all of the majors that are offered even tailor to the people and like the specific talents that you have. So like when I was in college, I struggled a lot, and I ended up changing my major 4 times before I like actually picked something, because it's kind of like, what do you do if you're not someone who cares about being a doctor or a lawyer? It's almost like, what is your point for being in college? So it's like, how are those people going to thrive in society unless they learn how to use their gifts and talents to then give something back? So I feel like having all those other majors and things like that are kind of like a necessity.
Okay, so the question that I believe somebody's listening to, and then we'll get to you in a second, Aaron. The question that I would believe that somebody's listening to right now would say, you changed your major so many times. What did you finally decide to do?
So what I finally decided doing was, I knew that I wanted to go into service work. For me, that felt more aligned if I became a certified life coach. The problem with that is there aren't enough colleges in the US that offers life coaching as like an actual major. There's only like 2 universities out of the whole country who does that. So it's kind of like, what is going to happen for the people who don't want to be psychologists and don't want to be social workers, but they want to help people? So what I ended up doing was I entered into a program at Penn State where I could create my own major. And the way that I was able to do that was I could combine disciplines together as opposed to deciding to be like a triple major. Because what's the point of me doing that and having 3 different degrees and still not making any money from having 3 of those things? So it's like, you have the paper to show that you're applied, but you're still not making any money. So like, what's the point of that? So with that, I ended up combining human development and family studies, rehabilitation and human services, communication, kinesiology, and psychology, all into one major.
Okay.
So I think that that's something that like is really helpful. Again, like if you're not in those traditional disciplines, because then it's like, you're kind of like left out in the dust if you don't care about those things. So you're kind of like left out and don't know how to make money. Oh. And like, that's another thing too, real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Real quick too, like in school, since you mentioned like what happens before university and college, I can tell you like, I've always been a straight A student. but I don't know crap about like taxes and all the necessary things that you need to know about like mortgages and all that stuff. I didn't learn that until I got to college. And it was because I decided to take a class for that. It wasn't even a requirement. So it was like grade school up to high school. I really wasn't learning the stuff that I needed to know. So like a lot of that is missed. So it's like you get to college and you're like, if you get to college, it's kind of like, what are you supposed to do?
Okay, I have one question for you, and then we're going to go to Aaron and hear his answer. My question to you is, do you think that when they come up with your college curriculum, that a lot of stuff that they give you is unnecessary for you to achieve your major?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the thing too, like, why am I learning things that I'm not going to be able to apply? Like, I feel like most of my schooling up until college and creating my major has been about, okay, sit here, here are your books, here are your assignments, memorize what's in the pages, take a test, you either get an A or you don't. If you fail, then you're a failure in this class. Sorry, don't know what to tell you, you're not gonna make any money. But if you get straight A's, hey, you'll probably get into college and then you're still gonna be in that same mode and still not know what the hell you're doing. So I feel like there are so many unnecessary things. So unless you're somebody who really is like either trying to be like that doctor or a lawyer, or you're just someone who needs to like actually memorize things, there's nothing for you. There's nothing for you to do unless you take advantage of those opportunities and say, okay, there's no path for me, so I need to be able to make one for myself. But if you've been in schooling that doesn't teach you how to be empowered and how to do those things, then again, none of this stuff can apply to you. So it's kind of like you have to find your own way out into the world. But what if you're not in like a good home situation? Since we're talking about society, if we're looking at society as like your home, if the people in your home don't know how to deal with money and they're still learning the old things that they learned from school and didn't learn anything else that's going to help you, you're still stuck.
Yeah, we actually did a show about this, talking about what you learn about money, how you learn things from your parents, and then we go from there. So we're going to go to Aaron for your answer. Do I need to repeat the question again, Aaron? Because it's been a while.
I already know you got to repeat the question.
So do you think that society is failing the younger generation when it comes to inflation for the jobs, not including inflation for the jobs with the salary and with the education, and putting them really in a financial landslide before they even come out and step out in the world?
My answer is no, because society is meant to make the people struggle that's already struggling, and the people that's on top stay on top. So that is the whole purpose of it, of not raising minimum wage. So like the people that are struggling are still struggling. But like we talked about in the previous episode, if in society, which will start in the household, if you teach your children how to stay together and band together, 2 or 3 people having a minimum wage job can sustain a nice house. And they all pitch in that minimum wage job and put their money together, and they can have a nice house and build from there. But that's you have to teach your children how to work together and how to, again, we have mistakes in our lives. We're older than our children. We know what it's like to struggle, and we know what it's like to save money and overcome certain things. And that's the things that we have to teach our children, because they're not going to teach them that in schools. That's not a class that you will ever get in school, how to overcome financial despair and how not to sleep on the floor in your parents' living room. But to what your daughter was saying, I think one of the issues that we do have is that so many jobs are just being created because people don't know where they fit in. So jobs are just being created all over the place, and like jobs are popping up out of nowhere. I went to school for psychology. I was in school for 5 years for psychology. And that was just because I wanted to understand people. I understand myself. I wanted to understand the people outside of me. I didn't necessarily want to sit down and listen to other people's problems for hours at a time, but psychology paid good money. So I was like, all right, I could do that. But at the end of the day, my sister actually came to me and told me that I would be a good life coach. I didn't even know life coaching was a job. I'm like, I laughed at her. I'm like, life coaching isn't even a real thing. Like I could be a coach for, training, or, a fitness coach and things like that. But when I looked up life coaching, it was an actual job. And like your daughter said, well, Bianca, I don't want to keep calling her your daughter. Like Bianca said, she took 3 or 4 different disciplines and put it together to create her own life coaching curriculum. And I only took psychology, my life experience, and spirituality, and put it together into life coaching. And I think that life experience is one of the biggest things that a lot of these jobs lack. That like psychology, you can't really help people in psychology without having some form of being able to overcome things, because textbooks can't teach you everything you need to know. Unlike engineering, like Ruben said, engineering is going to show you everything you need to know. This part goes here, the textbook showed you here, and this is what you do to put a rocket ship together. You don't really need life experience to put a rocket ship together, because the components are there for you. And things like psychology and life coaching, you need life experience in order to actually help people overcome things, because you can't necessarily relate to them if you don't have that life experience. But again, I think people come out of the blue and just make up jobs, and that's where so many different jobs come from, so people can fit in. But society, which is starting in the home, needs to help build up our children in order to, again, if they can only maintain a minimum wage job, in order to come together and be able to overcome that little hurdle.
Okay, so you spoke on jobs. You mentioned it a couple of times. I'm also going to include society as not just individuals raising a family. I include society and communities looking to expand in groups. It includes government, it includes business, it includes education. So when I look at society, it includes a multitude of other factors being banded together. But let's talk about jobs for a second.
Can I cut you off for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because society, the definition of society is an organization or club formed for a particular purpose or activity. So again, if you're going to include the government was formed for the purpose to keep their generational wealth going. But go ahead, and we formed our own society within our house to keep our lineage going, to keep our name, quote unquote, our name going, and to uplift our children to be better than what we were. And that's what the government does by keeping the wealthy and the poor struggling. But go ahead to what you were saying.
So this is what we do here. I write stuff down and then come back at them. And then they pull out Webster dictionary definitions and come back. Hey, this is what we do. But see, we used to this. This is how we flow. I'm going to go by my definition of society, even though your definition does have credence, because let's face it, people form groups. And when they form these groups, they form it for the betterment of those groups, not for the whole ball and wax. But we're trying to get out of that. We're going to be selfish. And we're going to talk about selfishness too at some point. So I think I said we were going to talk about jobs. One of the things that hurt the younger generation, and I know you said job creations, you're always going to have new jobs popping up with technology. However, you're always going to lose a lot of jobs because of technology. You're going to lose more jobs than you have jobs that are created because of technology. One of the biggest problems that hold this new generation, the millennials, and then the GXs, and the ones that are on the tail end, and the boomers, or whatever group you want to name that holds them back, is because when you're older, you cannot afford to retire early. Like the retirement age, if you were born after 1960, for you to get almost full benefits, not full benefits, almost full benefits, is 67 and a half. Full benefits come at 70. Okay. When you talk about healthcare, the premiums on healthcare is just ridiculous, and they're always going up. And then there's always a fight. One of the things that keep people from retiring are two things: money They don't want to take the 62, leave at 62 and take the loss there because there's a loss at 62. So they have to stay to their 67. And healthcare. But by these people staying in these jobs longer, it's hurting these newer generation of people that's supposed to replace them. So what can we do to make it so we leave at an earlier age and get the hell out the way for the newer generation? Any ideas, guys?
That's not true because
I'm gonna say you can't, not with a job. Like the thing is, like you need multiple sources. You can, but you can't at the same time. So the can part happens if you use your job while you're in your job. You go ahead, you save some of that income, and you invest in yourself. You invest in a side hustle. You start generating another source of income, and then you let that snowball, and that'll help you get out of the rat race. But if the goal is to stay in that one single earning income position, and just wait 30 years, and hope 401k and Social Security are gonna take care of you, you're gonna be working till you're 70. That's the reality of it. You're gonna be working till you're 70 or maybe even older, with inflation and everything else. But the only way out is multiple sources of income. That's it. But I think Aaron may have be ready to say the same thing, or maybe he got something else. But if it's a matter of going to growing up, going to school, going to college, getting that one good job, and then working it out for 30 years, and then looking for retirement afterwards, nah, you're gonna be working till you're 70 plus, if you even make it to be that old and not die on your way there. But realistically, the way everything is set up, nah, you're not getting out. Like that them chains are gonna be on you whether you like it or not. Not unless you got you while you're there, you're making 50, 60, 70,000, you manage to put away 10,000 a year, and after 2 years you got 20,000, you say, okay, I'm gonna take this 20,000 and invest it in another business, or invest in another idea, and invest it in something that's gonna generate me an additional income. If you don't do, you don't start thinking that way, nah, you're not getting out.
Well, I'm gonna comment on what you just said, Ruben, real quick. And I agree with everything you said. And it's even really a rational way by government to keep you with those chains on. Because if you notice, you said 401, 403, whatever, okay. Jobs used to have pensions. Jobs it's so hard to find a job with a pension that will pay you without you having to have a 401. You should still have one anyway, but jobs that would pay you for your years of service, they're almost gone. Your retirement is, like you said, that's your responsibility right now. You got to figure it the hell out. Okay, Aaron, since you said that's not true, let's hear what you got to say. And I'm right.
The first thing you said was is not possible. But so going in age order, Mel is the oldest, then is me, I believe, then Ruben, and then Bianca. So right now, in the middle of it, Ruben has the blueprint, because Ruben, not putting numbers out there, but he has multiple streams of income. And right now I'm trying to create multiple streams of income. I believe, Mel, you have years in at the job that you were at, so you kind of are in a jam, but you're still able to create multiple streams of income right now. But it's not going to be as much as what Ruben is going to exit out with. He could probably potentially be done at 50 and be sitting right, and then his kids would inherit that and inherit his work ethic and his blueprint. And Bianca is a life coach. She can create multiple streams of income from that, and creating her own job security and building herself up. She's in her 20s. If I would have knew what I knew now and what Ruben knows in my 20s, I'd be sitting nice right now. But like building multiple streams of income, you can't, we were bred and taught so much on relying on outside sources of income, outside sources to help us be comfortable, when everything that needs to be done, we have to do it ourselves. And we need to create, just like, sorry to say, but Caucasian people just come up and create jobs out of the blue. Like they just create things, and people go for it because they think they know what was right. So as long as you can create your own multiple streams of income, however you may want to do that. Hopefully it's a legal way to do it. You can be sitting pretty by the time you, especially Bianca, by the time she's 40 or 50 and not have to wait till 62 or 70 in order to reap the benefits of what she wants when she's older.
Yeah.
Again, it's a little harder for somebody like you, Mel, that's been grinding your whole life and not knowing the things that you know now. And it's not, again, it's not too late. It's just a little harder.
Okay, now I don't disagree with anything that you said. And the last portion of it did save you, because we were talking about what you learn when you're younger and how you carry it. So because I was from a different generation, what they taught you was different as far as generational wealth and then building money and then moving forward. You learned on the fly. You also included yourself in that. If you were 20 years old, you know, maybe you wouldn't even went to college. You would have been like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. So there's always some what ifs involved in what's going on, and how do you plan for the future. But with inflation, with the different ideologies on planning for the future, it does make it hard for the younger generation. Like, they can come up with ideas and they can make it work and they can be dedicated in doing that. But as Bianca said, you know, they didn't really even teach her how to write a damn check when she was in school. So they're purposely putting them so they're behind the 8 ball before they even start. So Bianca, topic.
All right, so there's a lot of things that I agree and disagree with. So it's kind of like one of those things where it's like yes, but also no. So like Aaron, so you're completely right, like about the coaching thing and like making multiple streams of income. Like the fact that, you know, coaching offers so many opportunities for like writing books, working with people one-on-one, groups, like educational things, like stuff like that. It allows you to be creative so that you can make more income through like those passive income streams. But I feel like it is kind of like a deterrent for people who are within like my age group in the 20s, because like again, nobody's really teaching you how to do that. Like you can have all the knowledge that you have within your home, but if you're going to be in school and you're with your peers, if none of y'all are learning how to like empower yourselves, or you're learning like, okay, this is something I can actually do, I don't have to do the same things that my parents, i.e. the older generation, did, then you're still going to be in the same boat as them. So I don't think that like my years of just being in school, like high school and college, it wasn't something that was normal for me to see other people who kind of had the same mindset as me, as like, okay, if there's not a path, I'm going to make one. All right, if I don't know this thing, let me look at it on my own and like try to figure it out. Let me try to figure out like, what are all my resources and how can I use all of those things? It's kind of more of like, I'm in school right now, so I need to rely on what's being taught. This is what I'm being taught in my home, so I'm just going to blindly accept it and not question it. So it's like you're not really being taught or having the opportunities to learn how you can break outside of that mold to then make all that money and like fit in the way that you need to so that you can thrive.
Okay. Is that everything that you agreed with and didn't agree with? Because you made it sound like you had a whole long.
No, that's just like what's coming up for me with the last thing. Because quite honestly, so much happened, I just don't remember some of those points. I didn't write it down, so I'm just being real.
Okay, so
I think so. To answer some of the stuff you were saying, as far as like, you know, being in a position where you're in college and, you know, you're looking around and you're seeing that like, you know, a lot of your peers are not equipped as far as like, okay, if there's not a way, you know, let me make a way. The reason why that is because, well, 2 things. 1, your upbringing. 2, school's not made for that. School's not made for you to be an individual. School's made for you to follow the rules and, you know, be like everyone else. Like one thing, for example, when you're in school, the goal is to get A's, 90% and above. That's what the goal is. In real life, in society, 10%, 10, 20% is all you're striving for. That's a failing grade in school. 10 to 20%. Like if you're getting 10% return on your investment, that is a great return. The S&P 500 gives you 10% of your investment. That means for every $100, you get $10 back at the end of the year. That's considered great. So just a matter of looking at things and mentality. Another example, baseball. To be a Hall of Famer in baseball, you just need to hit the ball 3 times out of 10. If you're batting 300, you're batting excellent. That is great. Those are spectacular. Those are Hall of Fame numbers. 3 out of 10 times. 3 out of 10 times. Same thing with basketball. If you're shooting 30% from the 3-point line, 30%, that's doing good. You're shooting 40%, you are an amazing 3-point shooter. Same thing with field goal shooting. You shooting 45%, you shooting 50%, you're doing spectacular. Whereas like in school, you know, unless you're doing 80, 90, or 100 unrealistic numbers, then you're not really considered to be, you know, the cream of the crop. You're not really considered to be, you know, the best of the best, the smartest and the brightest of the brightest. Like for me, I didn't get a chance to go to college. And because I didn't get a chance to go to college at first, it was bothering me, but it took me only about a year of not going to college and watching all of my peers go off to college and speaking to them and still keeping in contact with them to realize like, yo, this is the best decision I could have made. Because granted, I didn't go to college and I didn't get a degree and I still don't have a degree. But one of the things they forced me to do is what you were talking about, which is figure out, all right, I got to go figure out on my own how to make myself become something. And it's like not sitting around, not waiting on anybody, not going to ask anybody, you know, please give me something. And saying, okay, what can I learn? So I went to barber school. I focused and I graduated. And initially, you know, a lot of people were still like, yo, yeah, you got to, you know, you're a barber, but what's that supposed to do? You know, I'm like, all right, look, I know and I understood what the barber industry was missing, which was just professionalism. I wasn't good, but I knew I could be professional. The same mentality that I was going to apply in somebody else's job, because I wanted to go to school. I wanted to get an international business degree. I figured, okay, you know what? If I was going to apply myself in somebody's corporate office with an international business degree, I could apply myself the same way with clippers in my hand. Once I get good, then it's going to be on. And that's what I did. I did that. And here we are 15 years later. I own my own shop and I own several other businesses. But the point is, it's a mentality that you got to have that starts at school and it starts at home. I should say it starts at home first. And it's also, and you can also gain it at school, but that part of you gaining it at school is really going to come from having certain teachers that have real life world experience, not just the ones that are just like there to be like, hey guys, okay, you know, make sure we got a quiz tomorrow. Like I've had some really cool teachers, you know, when I was in high school. One of them, he passed away. It was my history teacher, Mr. Bradford. He was an amazing teacher, man. That guy, he would come in, he would be cursing. He spoke to us, you know, while we were in the 10th grade, like we were fully grown adults, which I loved and respected because like out of all the different teachers that I had, I remember his class the most because one, history has always been one of my favorite subjects, but two, the manner in which he taught us, the manner in which he captivated us, you know, as 10th graders in his class, and the level of respect that he showed us, you know, even though we were kids, he made sure he told us, listen, the world is fucking serious. You know, all the shit that y'all over here learn. These were like the type of language that he was using. But basically, it was like, don't sit there and wait for anybody to give you anything. You got to go out and get it. You got to go out and strive for it. You got to go out and fight for it. Because the whole concept of sitting and waiting and hoping and praying, you're just going to end up starving. 9 times out of 10, you're going to end up starving. So you got to go out and get it. You got to make a way out of no way.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Ruben, you know, we always sit down there and say we got an explosion of knowledge and this and that. I am truly messed up when you came out with the percentages. You know, that was crazy. And it made 100% sense. Like, school is the only thing that they ask you to be perfect at. Sometimes they'll ask you to be perfect at a job because they use clever words like productivity and cost effectiveness and all that other stuff, just to get you into the thing where they say you can't have human error when you do a job, but that's another topic. But really, if you just get 10% of your returns, you win it. I never really thought about it like that. It's like a totally boom, like, damn, I couldn't even think to put it like that. So thank you for that. You have anything to say about that, Bianca? And then we're gonna go to Aaron because he looks like he has something to say.
Yeah, so like I agree with you. So it's like I kind of was in that boat of like, for the most part of my schooling, you know, like you said, like you're taught to get like all those A's, like you have to be perfect, you have to do this. But it's kind of like, what about all the people who maybe don't have that opportunity, or they have that opportunity but realize that it doesn't fit for them? So it's kind of like screwed, like if you're in my boat where it's like you kind of have to do both of those things. So it's like, okay, you get to college, all this money is spent, and you're like, okay, I know that this isn't the best decision for me, but the way that kind of things are looking in like society right now, it's going to look good on paper for me to still have a degree in something. So it's like I ended up doing that, but also because I wanted to make my own way, because I also had a lot of teachers growing up who, my favorite ones too, were the ones who taught me like things about life. It made me feel like even though this was where I was at, there were still available resources around me in that area where I could still learn things and like still apply them. But then on the other end, I still had to do things that were like outside of that. Whereas like I had to get certified for like my life coaching business. So I still had to take all the extra work to do all those other things. So I think it really is kind of like messed up the way that things are set up for people who don't feel like they have the option or like the confidence to not follow that regular path. It just ended up that like, for me, I got to a point at some point where like I was going to drop out of college because I was so tired of feeling like I had to fit into like a major or something that like didn't appeal to me. So I definitely like agree with everything that you're saying, kind of like about having to get that knowledge like from yourself if you can't get it from all those other people, because that's not how the education system is set up. But something else I want to bring up too, because I also learned a lot about education, because that was one of my majors, like before I switched to, there are a lot more schools right now that are focusing on experiential learning, which is kind of more what you're talking about. It's like, here are the things that we're teaching you. We can teach you whatever we want and tell you these things to do, but until you actually go out into the real world and do that, you're not going to learn it. So experiential learning is more focused on that aspect of learning, as opposed to like, here's what you have to memorize. So I think that that's better for people now moving forward in the future. And it's going to help them learn more things because they're able to apply it. And also it's things that are going to cater to them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Aaron.
I was just going to say that school is deceptive. And when I took psychology and just like over the years, just understanding how the brain works, like, yeah, they tell you have to get straight A's to be good or whatever. But at the same time, you have to get straight A's. But if you get a 68 or a 70, you're still going to pass. So in the front of your mind, you're thinking like, I need straight A's. But then you realize if your peers are getting 70s, y'all still going to the same grade. Y'all still passing. So it's like, why am I striving to get straight A's? And my homie is getting 70s and we in 12th grade together. And then when you graduate and go to college, they ask for your degree. They don't ask you what grades you got. I could have got straight C's when I went to college. They just asked for my degree. I could be garbage in psychology. I could not know a darn thing in psychology or any other major. But because I got a little piece of paper, it looks good. But go ahead.
And that's why I always look at doctors funny. Because for me, I understand clearly what you just said. And even though some people basically they got the doctor degree, whether you're the first of the class or the last of the class, if you graduate from doctor school, you're still a doctor. Yeah. So for that reason right there, I always look at doctors funny, because it's like, yes, you know, I strongly believe, you know, it takes years, and I respect doctors and everything like that, but all doctors are not created equal.
Nah, like nobody is created equal. And again, if you don't have, they took away a lot of the internships. Internships is actually going out and experiencing what your job is going to be like. But if you take that away, then you just you regurgitating whatever you learned in the books. And a lot of the books are outdated, and a lot of books just don't apply to worldwide things and the things that are going on in society as we're talking about now, and with the people around you. So like again, like they tell you, yeah, you need to get straight A's, you need to do your best. But if you get a 70, it's cool because you're still gonna pass. So it's like, all right, I'm out here, busting my ass, studying all night while my friends partying, and then like I get a straight A, they get a 70, and we still got the same piece of paper. And he might get it, or he or she might get a job before me because they know how to finesse people, they know how to persuade people, they know how to talk, they know how to present themselves. But if I never learned how to do that, or I don't know how to do that, I'm a introvert. I'm not able to talk in front of people, but they are because they've been at parties and they've been partying for the past 4 years. So they know how to recreate themselves in front of the people that they need to recreate themselves in front of. They're going to get a job before me. Because again, they're going to ask for the degree. Like Ruben, if you ask somebody that come and like, we need a new barber, and do you have your barber's license? Like, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, what the last shape up had, what your last shape up look like? Like,
Listen, I want to see a demo. When people come in, I want to see a demo. And it's funny you mentioned that because I actually just had an experience. So one of my clients, I'm managing his shop. He just opened a new shop, and I'm helping him. I'm with the hiring process or whatever. And it's a barber that came in and they did a demo, and he told me the barber was licensed, and I was like, all right, that's dope. But one of the things I didn't do was I didn't look at the license to see when exactly he got licensed. So he came, he did the demo. I wasn't there. He FaceTimed me. I looked at the cut. And I'm like, all right, is he done? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, cool. So, all right. So I talked to my guy and I was like, listen, I'm gonna need to see his license because like it's not making sense right now. So when I looked at the license, I realized he's got licensed last year. So he's only been licensed for a year, and now I understood. Okay, now that makes sense because I remember when I was just got my license, I also wasn't good. So I was licensed, but I wasn't as skilled as I am now. And I'm okay with him not being skilled, but it just now that he got the technical part. I mean, now he got the theory part or whatever, as far as like making sure he was able to pass his license. Now it's time for him to come in the shop around people that know what they're doing under somebody like me and the other barbers that I got here, and be able to say, okay, now this is how you want to do this. This is where you're gonna hone your skills. Because yes, school was made for you to essentially get yourself a degree so you can go get yourself an employment and then be able to like, try to prove yourself now as far as saying, look, this is this paper says that I could come out here and work. All right. Now you still got to start at the bottom. You still got to come in at an entry-level position. You still got to come in and learn the job. You still got to come in and learn on the job. Because even though you got that piece of paper that said you graduated, you completed, you finished something, and you saw something all the way through, that doesn't mean you have any real world life experience. And that's really what counts at the end of the day a lot of times, because there was a time when people could come out of high school and then just work their way up from these jobs without having to go spend money in college. And then, 30 years later, they're at a position with no college degree, but they can still make six figures because they done work their way up.
But back then, high schools had trades in it. Wood shop, home ec.
It did have trades in there. Absolutely. You're right. And they don't have them anymore. And you know what? I'm not going to say not all the schools, because there is a school in Jersey, which I'm a part of the board on. And they have a cosmetology department. They got a barbering department. They got an engineering department. They got a computer science department. They got several departments that they have. And they're trying to bring that back. That particular school is trying to bring that back as far as like making sure kids, while they're still in high school, are able to learn these different trades, which is going to allow them to get out in society and not have to take on the debts, that college puts on them, just to put them even further behind the eight ball when they're trying to go out there and earn a living and provide for themselves. So okay. You're right.
Okay, so I'm gonna mention a couple things, and then we're gonna go into our final portion of the show, and we're going to include Bianca in that portion too, because I know she has some things to say. Ruben, I'm going to start with you because I agree with everything that you just said. There is paper and there is skill, and it's separated. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think that we have at least one school in Philly, the Skill Center, Randolph Skill Center on Henry Avenue, that does still teach you a trade.
I know Dobbins does. Dobbins teach barbering. I don't know about the school you just mentioned. Dobbins still has a barbering program in there. That's the only one I know.
Dobbins and Randolph are they connected.
Okay, so there you go. So they will teach you a skill. My only problem with that, are they teaching people, how can I put this? Skills that they think that applies to their generation or their economic background? Are they teaching them skills where they can grow? As far as Aaron said, or Ruben said it too, getting a job and then not going to school and then making six figures, I think my generation is the last for that. I mean, we could not go to college when I was younger and then get a job, and then you can get an apartment, you get a car, you'd have plenty of money, you did lived a good life. You know, I think my generation was the last for that. Most places require you to have a piece of paper, like a police officer. I mean, a degree is not going to help you be able to deal with people in that environment. So I think that's totally stupid. Internships, a lot of these schools, I personally believe they don't have internships, because if you're going for a certain degree in something and then you intern there over the summer, you might change that major, then drop out, and like the hell with that. And then they end up losing revenue because you're getting a little bit of foreknowledge of what you're actually paying for. If you're blind and you just believe that this might be the best thing for you, you might still keep on playing that money for 4 years. And there's always a money game when it comes to education in this country. Also, dropout. My daughter said that she considered dropping out. I think a lot of times in our society, the biggest hurdle when a kid wants to drop out and change directions, a lot of times are the parents. I want you to do this. I want you to do that. I need you to do that. I want you to be the first to do this. I did this. Your sister did that. Your aunt did that. And sometimes everything is not for everybody. So when your kid is sitting down there telling you that they may want to change directions on a lot of stuff, listen to what the hell they say, because they're actually living that. So we're going to go into the last portion of the show. I didn't give you guys a chance to answer this, and I did it on purpose. I don't want to hear y'all stuff. We're going to go to the last portion of the show, where is the who's to blame? Who do you blame for society not giving the kids, the future generation, all the resources that they need? Because I mean, we're still a country, you know, we're still a world, we're still communities. So if the younger generation fell, they replaced the old. So that means we fell too, you know. So who do you blame? Let's start with Aaron.
Again, it depends on who we are putting in a bracket of society.
All that.
So, I mean, if you're gonna blame somebody, you gotta blame yourself. Like, because we the one raising our children, and to continue to let the education system and the government teach our children that they need to look outside of themselves to be better, or outside of themselves to build up other companies, is just crazy to me. You have to teach them to look within themselves, to build themselves up and build up society around them, which is they can create their own jobs. They can go to trade school. Even if you want to fund your friends, I could pay Ruben, teach my sons how to cut hair if I want them to, if they want to open a barbershop or things like that. Just recycling the money throughout our community and funding our close-knit society of friends and family will build us up the way that we need to be built up. So I blame ourselves. I blame the parents for the failing of our children in society.
Ruben.
I'm gonna go with what Aaron just said, 150%. I mean, at the end of the day, we could sit there and try and point fingers all we want, but if our kids and society is failing, it starts at the house. It starts at home. It leaks outside, you know, as far as like the village and everything else, but it starts at home. And one of the things Bianca mentioned was like, you know, with the pandemic, when you're at home and, you know, if you don't have the best situation in your own life and then you're at home and you don't, this is all you see and you don't really see, you don't really know have options, you still got the internet. And I'm not talking about social media because social media has got like a false lens of got everybody balling on social media. Everybody's winning. That's not true. Everybody's not winning. Most people are failing. And the reality of it is only about, it's called a 1% for a reason. You know, like when we think about, if you go on social media right now, you're going to see everybody making $100,000 a year. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. All right. It's as simple as that. If that many people were making that kind of money, we would be living in a completely different world. Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, everybody's not out here making the money that they say they make. Everybody's not out here living the life that they say they live. It's really like, it's the same thing with school where like you're expected to get all A's, and when really in the real world it's only about 10%, 20%, 30%. Those are actually what the real numbers are. Same thing with social media and everything else. I say all this to say, if you got the right situation, if you don't have the right situation at home, you can still have access to YouTube. You can still have access to, you know, Google. You can still have access to these different resources outside of your home and away from necessarily Instagram or your Facebook and things like that, where you can take the time to research. Now, Google is not the all source of everything, but you can still find links, which will take you to books, which will take you to different things that's going to open your mind and help you to see and connect and have a different vision, have a different understanding of the world that you live in the world that's going on around you.
Okay, so Bianca, I'm going to ask you the same question, but before I ask you this question, someone that would need your life coach services, how would they get in touch with you?
Oh, so if anyone wants to get in touch with me, you can get in touch with me through my website, which is my first and last name.com. That's biancaward.com. Is my name going to be like on this?
No, you better give them the spelling of your name.
BEAONCA Ward, WARD.com.
Okay, now, who do you blame for the situation for your younger generation? Mm-hmm. And if you have any fixes or any comments to go with that, please enlighten us.
Okay, so like I really agree with what you said, Ruben, like about like the home situation, and then just being able to like use the internet and like have like all other available resources with like the internet and Google and all that stuff. But I still really, really do blame a lot of that on the education system, because like I know I keep like beating a dead horse saying this, but I'm telling you, like, if not for COVID, mostly kids are spending the majority of their time at school. They're spending most of those times with like the teachers and whoever their peers are. Like, if you look at like grade school, you get to school at like 8 a.m., you're there till 3, then you probably have like extracurricular activities. So you're not getting done till like later in the evening. So that's such a long period of time for you to learn things. Then what? You get home, you do your homework, you probably eat with your parents, and then your day's like over. So that's a lot of time to be acquiring knowledge and a lot of like conditioning from whoever you're around. And those people are also going to be learning stuff that probably wasn't going to help benefit themselves in their own lives. So I feel like that's something that really has to be like considered here too. And I think that can be a pro, and it can also be a con. It can be a pro because you're getting all that extra knowledge. It can also be a pro because if you have peers and teachers who are really good with like technology and like Google and stuff like that, if they don't know something, they can recommend a resource for you. And they can say, hey, go to this website to get more information about this thing, which then could like pique your curiosity and then make you look into like books or connect with people online. Because now you can do that too. You can literally just reach out to people online and say, hey, this is something that I'm like struggling with. you can enter into like a Facebook group and say something like that and get connected with like a mentor or somebody else like that way. So I think that it really is important what you're learning in school, not just from a sense of like, this is what you're learning in the books, but this is what is being said when you're at that like school environment through like the people that you're around, because that's where you're spending most of your time.
Okay, interesting point of view from this actual generation. So, Mel, who do you blame? I blame government. I blame society. I blame communities. The reason I'm going to say that, we already know that the government is self-serving today to a degree, a high degree. We also know that people that are older don't want to be place centers. They don't want to move. They don't want to move out the way for the next generation to come in. The way the world works is the young replace the old, you know, and then eventually they're going to get replaced. And then and so on and so on. And that is the longevity of this planet, of this world, of this universe. These are the natural order of things. I think that it's a travesty that we are human beings. We are the only species on this planet that doesn't put their young first, you know, whether it's in groups, whether it's in singular. And I know a lot of people are sitting down there, they may listen to this and say, hey, I was a great parent. I gave my child everything that they needed. I did this, I did that. And I applaud you for what you're doing. I'm not taking shots at you. What I'm saying is that even though you did everything that was necessary, the rest of society is still failing and we're still a group. And in some way, we got to come up with a method, a term, an idea, some creativity so we're not failing, so we can adhere to what's going on for the generation that's in charge now, but still move the hell out the way for the generation that's coming. And then maybe that generation that'll come will take care of those that had came before them, like society used to do. The young replaced the old, and then the young took care of the old until they were born. So that's my answer to that. I don't know how else to put it. I'm trying to be more understanding. This is the new Mel. Understanding. I ain't gonna be like those assholes and this and that. What I am gonna say is, I want to thank everybody for joining us this week. I'm joined by Ruben the Monarch, Aaron the Hitman. Thank you very much, Bianca Ward, for joining us. That's my pride and joy. And I'm Big Mel. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to. Are you getting ready to say Aaron something there? Because you look like.
I was waiting till you finish the closing because we ain't done yet. Because I had a question.
Well, not done. Let me hear what you got to say.
No, because so basically you saying that we have to raise each other's children like it was back in the day. So you saying if your household is winning, ain't nobody winning if the household next to you not winning. So it's your responsibility, because then you're saying is your responsibility or your neighbor's responsibility to help uplift other people. But then you said that it's societies and the government issue why the younger generation isn't thriving. So you're putting all the blame on everything outside of your household, while saying at the same time we have to uplift the people next to us. So you have to uplift the people next to you, but you don't have to uplift the people that you are like that you bred, the people that are in your household.
Now that's not what I said. I made it clear. I made it crystal clear that I said that if you were doing what was necessary with your kids, to raise your kids, to do whatever you had to, that I applaud you, because there are people that don't do that. You should be applauded for taking care of your house. Yes, you should be able to take care of your house. No, the hell with that. Yes, you should take care of your household first, but you're still part of the community. Like, it's still other kids. That's like, my daughter never really went to public school. She never went to public school, but yet and still, I'm taxed. as if she went to public school, and I'm paying another fee. I never complained about that. I hear people complain like, my kids don't go to public school. Why am I paying taxes? You're paying taxes because those kids are going to be in charge. They're going to be your neighbors. It's going to be their world.
So what
So
I'm saying is,
the part.
so what I'm saying is, like, you did your part to your society, which is your household, to uplift your daughter to make sure she succeed in life. It's not your fault that your neighbor didn't do the same. Like, it's not your responsibility to raise their children. It's not your responsibility to help them get a better income for their children. Like, that's.
But it's my responsibility to put the tools in place so they can do better in their household, because those who are still going to be in charge at some point.
If your neighbor knocked on your door like, yo, I'm mad because Bianca went to private school and my son over at William Penn getting shot at, like, Mel, why you let that happen? You're gonna look at them like they crazy because you have nothing to do with it.
I don't think that's where he's at with it. I think what Mel is saying is essentially like, why when you're done, we're not even. It's a never-ending job as far as like when you talk about raising kids and having that village concept of raising children. So essentially, like, he did his part with Bianca, but while he's satisfied with the job that he's done with Bianca, he also feels that it will be his duty to help his neighbor with their situation. Because what happens now is, let's say you say, okay, my neighbor's kids are not my problem because they're my neighbors. Okay, now you're right, they're not your problem until they become your problem, because now that same neighbor that you could have helped while they were the kid and they were younger and you could still mold, they're no longer a kid now, they're an adult. They didn't have the proper upbringing. They were still your neighbor. They didn't have the proper upbringing. And now guess who's robbing you? Guess who's pointing a gun at you? So now guess who's coming to jack you? Now so it's like,
that's like, so open up a community center to help the youth around the neighborhood.
But now that's part of you being a part of helping the solution. That might be.
But if you don't have that community center, what are you supposed to go next door and help them? Like, I could see if it's family members, like that's part of the village.
It doesn't have to be a community center, but what I'm getting from what he's saying, essentially, like, my brother's keeper type of situation. Like when we talk about I'm my brother's keeper, it doesn't necessarily have to be blood brother. Like your neighbor, the way it used to be, it would be somebody that's like, if you living next door to somebody and you've been in that neighborhood your whole life, you essentially you watch that person grow up, you see everything that's going on. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But if you can, if it's within your means, why not? Because at the end of the day, you're making society, you're making your neighborhood, you're making your environment that much better by helping and providing, not just for your children, but for the people that surround you. Because as a whole, now because let's say I can afford to do all the things that I need to do for my kids, and I still have leftover, and I see my neighbor in need of help, and I know I can help, and I know they wouldn't mind if I help. Because some people would mind now. Some people, they got pride, they got everything else. Like, oh, what are you doing? Nobody asked you for that. So it can be a double-edged sword. It can come back to bite you. But if it's a situation where y'all have that relationship, and it's like, look, I understand the situation. I'm not trying to put you in a position to where you got to feel any less of anything. Here's X, Y, Z to make sure, such and such can do what they need to do. That now could be the difference in making whoever that neighbor is going either astray or sticking on the proper path to becoming the next senator, mayor, president, lieutenant, whatever that it might be. Just because you took the time outside of what you had to do for your household and say, yo, I'm gonna go ahead, because people volunteer all the time. What's the difference between you volunteering at a soup kitchen or you volunteering, at a community center? The community center is a whole bunch of kids that may not even live in your neighborhood, right?
Now, everything is everything that you just said. I'm on the same page with, but I don't think Aaron really understands everything that I'm saying. I'm saying, like, I may never deal directly with that child next door. I may never do nothing for that child, but I may sit down there and get with a group and say, listen, you need to change the education system in this school because it's going to benefit all these kids, not just my child or that child or this, and setting a tone to help everybody that comes along. So sometimes it's not a material thing that you do for somebody next door or you do for their kid every time or give them a ride or this and that. It's about society. Do you do things for everybody? Do you put your inputs? Because your input, you just saying like, we need to change that. That might get a group together and they change it. So that's my point on that.
All right, I know we out of time, so I'm not gonna keep this going.
Well, we can do this again, and we can do this all night next time. So anybody that liked the conversation, please like the video, subscribe, leave us a comment. Like I said, we answer all comments. We'll bring you on if you have a topic that you want to talk about. There's so much things that people see in their community before we see it's a problem. Problems can be fixed a lot easier in the beginning than they can as they linger. Once again, I want to thank Bianca for joining us. Aaron the Hitman, he trying to sock me today. Ruben trying to be the peacemaker today, the monarch, he using this prerogative to control thing and make sure we don't go to war. And I'm Big Mel. Thank you once again for joining us for Combustible Elements. We look forward to seeing you with the next topic. Peace.
Peace.